The Disastrous Life of Saiki Kusuo is an anime about a high schooler with psychic powers. He hates his powers and wishes he was a regular person.
思ったら大間違いだ。スプーンを曲げられる。カレーが食べにくくなるだけだ。当たり外れも自由自在。お腹を壊すだろ。生まれた時から全てを与えられた世界一幸せな男。冗談じゃない。全てを奪われた。
Despite wanting to live an ordinary life, he is constantly surrounded by a cast of wacky people, all unintentionally bothering him. One of which is Kaidou Shun, a boy who has chlamydia, also known as 8th grader syndrome. It essentially means he believes himself to have various special abilities. To have an evil power stuck in his arms, which he controls with bandages, and an evil organization following after him. This, of course, is entirely fabricated, and he is in fact a very shy high school student with no powers who just so happens to enjoy occult, emo, punk, and gothic aesthetics. He is one of the most popular characters in the series, which is why this might strike you as a strangely popular topic. I'm known for being in some of the most obscure fandoms possible, so how could I possibly make a video about Saiki? Well, this will be a story about Sukisho, of childhood trauma, and the most interesting anime character that no one seems to understand. And as this is my first appearance on the channel, I would like to introduce myself. I am Sora Ifak Sukisho. I am a goat cat, as you may be able to see, and I love anime and emo culture. I especially love Sukisho. This video, despite having little information and evidence involving it, will definitely be longer, so sit down and grab a tea. Also, this video requires a surface level understanding of Sukisho, so I recommend either watching my video on it, which is a little outdated, so maybe just watch it on Tubi. As explained before, Kaidou is a character with no psychic powers. He is not nearly as interesting as any of the other characters. Why is he so alluring then? What makes him a fan favorite? Well, he is a quirky twink. People love fawning over him because they think he's cool and quirky and shy. Why I say, is the video the length that it is? Well, I've figured out something no one has yet. Kaidou Shun is not only a stereotypical boy with chlamydia, but the biggest Sukisho fan ever.
I can almost feel the tick like clockwork, hearing all the voices in my head each time I go there.
Before you leave, which you probably want to right now, I have proof. Notice the features in Kaidou's design. Is there anything strange about it? Here, let me juxtapose it with Sora Hashiba. Now the dots are connecting. Notice the ruffled up hair, that uniform with the collar popped up, that smug look on his face. Now these just seem to be mere coincidences until we bring Yoru into the question. That same smug look, the black baggy clothing, the style that they both share, and the most glaring, those bandages on the arms. That isn't a very prominent feature in most chlamydia characters. Take, for example, Rika and Yuta's costumes in Love, chlamydia, and Other Delusions. Well, yes, Yuta did wear bandages on his arm for the exact reason as Kaidou. You may notice the fact that they are always covered up. Compared that to Yoru and Kaidou, which always have their bandages out and visible. Yoru keeps his flashy by the fact that it's floating aimlessly in his sprites and animations. And Kaidou keeps his visible, making them the same shade of red as his eyes. This brings us to one of the other similarities. Yoru and Kaidou's bright eyes. They're sharp-colored, different than any other character in their respective media, and they're supposed to highlight the glare within their black attire. I would know. Just look at me. Now, before I get to my biggest bomb drop, I must first explain Kaidou's family dynamic. We never see his father, but his mother and father are upper middle class and are very strict on their three kids. Kaido has a younger brother and an older sister. And trust me when I say you are not ready to see them. Kaido's sister is Sora Kaido. Seem familiar? And notice that haircut. When you plaster it onto Sora Hashiba's hair color, you almost can't see a difference. Up until I heard about Shun's sister, I had little hope to prove this theory, but now I am absolutely sure that this was the writer's intentions. Now that we have pointed out all background information to explain the basis of this theory, we must have evidence. Kaido's personality is all over the place. He wants attention, but he's shy. He wants friends, but he acts so spooky he scares people off. Despite these personality traits differing from Sora Hashiba, his Chinibyo and sometimes his Paracosm, the story of Dark Reunion, intersect with Sukisho and other various plot points in the game and anime. And I know people will ask, so I'll tell you. A paracosm is an intricate story one creates in their mind. In Kaido's case, his paracosm touches on an evil organization called the Dark Reunion. A common plot point in Kaido's paracosm is that of the Dark Reunion's experiment on living beings. This comes up in episode 3, where a snake speaks onto campus and Kaido says it was a snake that was experimented on to turn into a huge monster. It turns out to just be a dying snake,
近所の小学生が振り回してたって。
causing everyone to make fun of Kaido.
ダークリユニオンも大したことないな。やめろよ、相手は悪の秘密結社だぞ。
人類選別計画で選別されちゃうよ。
But it does make you wonder, where did Kaido get the idea of that organization experimenting on beings? Well, look no further than Aizawa from Sukisho. His paracosm is based off of Aizawa and his lab. Of course, I have more evidence within the media, else I would be hung on the spot for even attempting to say this. In episode 20 of season 2, Kaido starts this episode by talking about a life-threatening battle, which vaguely reminds me of episode 12 of Sukisho, when Sunao and Sora fight to the death against Aizawa and eventually set him and his son on fire. This isn't the important part of the episode though, as around the 2-minute mark, Kaido is turned into stone accidentally by Saiki, and Saiki makes Arya, a fortune-teller Gyado girl, pretend to be him.
戦は3人
He uses hypnosis to make her appear as Kaido, but the hardest part for her is acting as him. Her Gyado hip speech makes everyone think something is wrong. And this all culminates in Yumihara, a girl who has a crush on Kaido, talking to Arya alone. Arya, pretending to be Kaido, states that her weird behavior has been because of Kaido's VID, and there's several alters who all communicate and attempt to sound as Kaido-ish as possible.
悪くなかったぞ
The main alters introduced are Jin, the god of destruction,
俺様暗黒の破壊神チン。
and Suzaku, named after a mythical bird creature.
二人は足は別件だ。
どうしたのカイドウ
ダメだこい
君。
つら
When comparing the personalities of Sora, Yoru, and Piss, differences seem to line up with Arya's story. While Kaido wants to be a likable person like Sora does, Suzaku and Yoru give the same sense of self-identity in fashion and speech styles. Yoru has a deep commanding voice and a dark fashion sense, while Suzaku has a high effeminate voice and has bling all over their phone and nails. Jin is the most clear in terms of resemblance. The fandom named Piss, Sora's most devious alter, cares for no one and nothing but pleasure and pain. Jin sees himself as a being that radiates darkness. He is used as a fantasy in Yumehara's work-out delusions, and he is a sadist who wants what he loves most. This makes him most obviously connected to piss. As previously stated, Kaidou's organization within his paracosm, Dark Reunion, has a very striking resemblance to Aizawa's organization, his lab. And this is later revealed when Kaidou says that he used to work for the Dark Reunion, and after finding out that the Dark Reunion planned to take humans and experiment on them, he later escaped using the power sealed within his right arm. Now, this may be a little bit too far away from the idea of Sora and Sunao escaping the lab, but the way I see it, he added fantasy elements to the situation of Sora and Sunao escaping the lab from the help of Shinichiro and Nanami, because they are very similar. And it is also stated in the episode where Saiki, Nendo, and Kaidou are doing their summer homework before school starts. Then they find Kaidou's notebook, which states that it states pretty much everything that he has about his paracosm. And this may seem completely unrelated, but if you had played the Sukisho games, then you would know that in Sukisho, Target Knights, Sora Hashiba and Sunao Fujimori received notebooks known as detective notebooks from Shinichiro in order to put down all of their investigations, and they eventually used that to find the man of 416 masks. And it is a very integral part of the plot, so he may very well have been inspired by that, although it is much more fantasy-like, as he's more so making stuff up instead of putting in actual evidence to a detective case or something. Now that I've connected Kaidou with Sukisho with little to no deniability, it's time to bring you to the very deep depths of the Kaidou and Sukisho layer. Now, what exactly is my connection to this? What makes me such a Kaidou expert? Well, I'll have you know I'm more qualified than you'd think. Ever since I first watched Saiki at 10, Kaidou has been my favorite character. I've always seen myself in him, and I may or may not have mentioned it before, but I've always seen myself almost completely in Sora Hashiba. When I was in elementary and in middle school, I was a shy kid who was also into emo fashion, acting like a villain, and very much into creepypasta stories. Of course, I did not look like Kaidou. One might argue I was a fat blonde kid instead, but of course, I always wanted to dye my fur Kaidou blue. Despite having depression, having depression also makes me more inclined to relate to him. It's not because of the emo culture taking depression and antidepressants, then because of his social anxiety and low self-confidence. I have my own paracosms of sorts, stories and lands built within my mind that I chose to treat as though it were real. I may go into more detail about my many paracosms, including Kaland, my magnum opus. Now, I had an entire rant about paracosms to fit in here, yet I feel like you'd maybe like a specific video about them, and maybe on the specific ways our minds seem to work together. I have a feeling this isn't the time for that video, though. This brings me to the Kaidou Troop Sukisho, are you? In this, well, I guess it'd be more of a theory, but with this idea, it basically means that Kaidou was one of the kids in Sukisho. Now, this doesn't really have too much evidence and really is more of just like trying to put all of my interests together, but it is an idea that I think Kaidou believes, and so I'd like to believe it too. And even though I know there are definitely many people on the Sukisho staff, or on the Saiki staff, which have never heard about the other media, I do think without a single doubt that Kaidou is inspired at least partly off of Sukisho, and without Sukisho, he would have been a completely different character. And it is thanks to Sukisho that I was able to find myself within Kaidou, and it's thanks to Kaidou that I was able to find myself with Sukisho. So, I would like to give a thank you to the both of them for this.